Hi there, my name is James and welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into a mysterious and gripping true crime story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. Now, let's get started. The coastal town of Westford, Maine was known for its serenity. Quaint houses perched on cliffs and the sound of waves crashing against the shore brought a sense of calm. But beneath this peaceful surface, a dark secret had long been buried. On July 18, 2022, Zoe Mason would stumble upon the truth, and that truth would unravel decades of betrayal, forever changing her life. Zoe Mason arrived in Westford to escape. She was running from her own pain, haunted by the sudden tragic death of her partner, Olivia Quinn. Olivia, just 31 years old, had died under mysterious circumstances. Her death quickly ruled an accident, but something about it never sat right with Zoe. Her grief was relentless, and the unanswered questions weighed heavily on her heart. In search of a fresh start, Zoe left behind the city and its reminders of Olivia, hoping to find peace in this quiet coastal town. Westford was everything Zoe had hoped for, isolated, small, and close-knit, a place where everyone knew each other. But there was an unsettling sense that the town itself was keeping secrets. Locals were friendly enough on the surface, yet behind their polite smiles was something unspoken. As Zoe settled into her new home, a modest cottage overlooking the sea, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into a story much darker than she expected. The town's charm was undeniable. Long stretches of empty beaches, cozy cafes, and picturesque streets lined with weathered houses gave Westford its postcard-perfect appeal. But for Zoe, this beauty was a mask, hiding something just out of reach. She had come here to heal, but the more time she spent in Westford, the more she realized that this place had its own scars, ones that ran deep. Zoe's grief was raw. Each day was a struggle to move forward, to find a new rhythm without Olivia by her side. Every room in her cottage seemed to whisper with memories of the life she had lost. Yet, in the midst of her pain, there was hope. Westford, she thought, could be her fresh start. She could rebuild her life here, away from the suffocating memories of her past. But something was off. The town, with its perfect calm, seemed almost too quiet. There was an undercurrent of tension that made Zoe uneasy. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but it was there, in the hushed conversations at the local diner, in the way some residents seemed to avoid eye contact, and in the way whispers would abruptly stop when she entered a room. Zoe tried to brush it off, convincing herself that it was just her grief playing tricks on her. She was, after all, still mourning Olivia's loss. But the more time she spent in Westford, the stronger her instincts grew. This town wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. Something dark was lurking just beneath the surface, and soon Zoe would find herself pulled into a web of secrets she never saw coming. On August 1st, 2022, Zoe Mason arrived in Westford. She moved into a small, quiet cottage overlooking the sea, hoping the tranquility would help her start over. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below was comforting, a constant reminder of the new life she was trying to build. But Westford was a town with its own secrets, and soon Zoe would find herself drawn into something much darker than she ever imagined. Shortly after settling in, Zoe wandered into a small cafe near the town square. It was there that she met Fiona McAllister, the cafe's owner. Fiona, 45, greeted Zoe with a warm smile, her blue eyes bright but lined with a hint of sadness. There was something comforting about Fiona's presence, and before long, they began to chat. Fiona offered Zoe friendship and introduced her to a small group of women she had known for years. Zoe was grateful to finally meet people in this new place, people who seemed genuine. The women in Fiona's group were friendly, but there was something about them that Zoe couldn't quite put her finger on. Ivy Daniels, 42, was a local school teacher, kind but reserved. She had an air of calm about her, but she often seemed lost in thought. Then there was Maura Prescott, 39, a talented artist. She was the most open of the group, always laughing, though Zoe noticed a sadness in her eyes when she spoke of the town. Lastly, there was Diana Mills, a 50-year-old lawyer who barely said a word during their gatherings. Her silence spoke volumes, as though she carried the weight of something unspoken. The women had been in Westford for years, yet none of them ever talked about their pasts in detail. They shared friendly smiles and light conversation, but whenever the topic of their lives before Westford came up, the mood would shift. It was subtle, but Zoe noticed. They would exchange looks, change the subject, or simply go quiet. It was strange, but Zoe didn't press. She was new here and didn't want to seem pushy. As Zoe began to adjust to life in Westford, she also met someone who caught her attention, Claire Harlow. Claire was 35, a local with a magnetic charm. She had a way of making people feel comfortable, and Zoe felt drawn to her. Claire's smile was disarming, her laugh infectious, and they quickly grew close. But Claire was also a mystery. Zoe noticed that Claire avoided certain topics, especially when it came to her family. If someone mentioned the Harlow name, Claire would grow quiet, her eyes clouded with unease. Despite her reservations, Zoe and Claire's relationship began to deepen. They spent more time together, exploring the town, sharing meals, and learning about each other. Claire had an effortless way of making Zoe forget her pain, if only for a little while. But still, there was something nagging at Zoe, a feeling that Claire was hiding something important. As the days passed, small details began to stand out. The way Claire always avoided questions about her family, how she would change the subject whenever Zoe asked about her life before Westford. It was subtle at first, but the more time Zoe spent with her, the clearer it became that Claire was keeping secrets. Then came the night of the dinner party, August 18th, 2022. Zoe was invited to a gathering at Fiona's house, a casual evening with the women she had come to know. The night started off lighthearted, with laughter and good food, but as the wine flowed, the conversation took a darker turn. Zoe overheard a hushed exchange between Maura and Ivy, their voices barely above a whisper. They were talking about a powerful family that seemed to control everything in town. Zoe leaned in, trying to catch more of the conversation. One name stood out, the Harlow family. Her heart skipped a beat. Harlow, the same name as Claire. She glanced across the table and caught Claire's eyes. There was a flicker of tension in her expression, just for a moment before she quickly smiled and looked away. Zoe's stomach turned. What were they hiding, and how was Claire connected? In the days that followed, the unsettling feeling only grew. Zoe couldn't shake the strange atmosphere that had fallen over the group of women. Ivy seemed more distant, avoiding eye contact when Zoe asked about the Harlow family. Maura, usually so full of life, would grow quiet whenever the town's history came up. And Diana, who rarely spoke to begin with, became even more withdrawn, offering little more than a nod during their gatherings. Even Claire, the person Zoe was growing closest to, began to act differently. Zoe noticed how Claire's smile would fade whenever someone brought up the past. The conversations between them felt less natural, more guarded. It was as though a wall had been put up between them, and Zoe could feel it. Zoe's instincts were telling her that something wasn't right. The women, the town, Claire, everything felt off. She was no stranger to loss or pain, but this was something else, something bigger. Zoe couldn't just ignore it. Over the following weeks, Zoe became more determined to uncover the truth. Why were these women acting so strangely? What was the secret they were keeping? And how did Claire fit into all of this? There was a darkness beneath the surface of Westford, one that Zoe was getting closer to with each passing day. By early September, Zoe Mason's unease had grown into suspicion. Every interaction, every glance, every whisper seemed to hide something. The town of Westford wasn't just quiet, it was keeping secrets, and those secrets were beginning to unravel. Then, on September 5th, 2022, Zoe found something that changed everything. It was an ordinary afternoon. The sun cast long shadows over the beach as Zoe sat alone in her cottage. She was sorting through old boxes left behind by the previous tenant when she discovered a small, dusty envelope wedged beneath a stack of papers. Inside, she found a series of letters. They were dated from over 20 years ago, written by someone Zoe didn't know. But as she read them, her heart sank. The letters told a story of manipulation, control, and fear. They revealed the truth about the Harlow family, a family that had used its wealth and power to abuse women in the town, forcing them into silence. The Harlows, led by the ruthless Nathaniel Harlow, had their hands in everything, and the town had turned a blind eye. Zoe's pulse quickened as she realized that these weren't just random stories. The letters connected to the very women she had befriended. Ivy, Maura, Diana. They had all been victims of the Harlows in one way or another. But it didn't end there. One letter in particular caught Zoe's eye. It mentioned a betrayal, one that happened just before Olivia's death. The letter implied that Olivia, Zoe's late partner, had discovered the truth about the Harlows and had tried to expose them. Zoe felt her chest tighten. Olivia's death, which had been ruled an accident, was no accident at all. She had been getting too close to the truth, and now Zoe knew why. Her hands shook as she read the final lines of the letter. Olivia had died because of what she uncovered, and Claire was a Harlow. Zoe's mind raced. Could Claire have known about this? Was she involved? She had to find out. The betrayal was too much to bear. Everything was coming apart, and Zoe needed answers. That evening, Zoe confronted Claire. They stood in the small living room of Zoe's cottage. The tension in the air was palpable. Claire's face was pale, her expression conflicted, as Zoe showed her the letters. Zoe's voice trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief as she asked, "Did you know? Did you know what your family did?" Claire's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Zoe saw the woman she had grown close to. Claire shook her head. "I didn't know everything," she whispered. "I knew there were things my family kept quiet, but I didn't want to be part of it. I tried to stay away." Zoe stepped closer, her anger rising. "But you knew, Claire. You knew enough to stay silent." Claire wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. "If I spoke out, they would destroy me, Zoe. They'd destroy us both." Zoe's heart ached. She had loved Claire, but this was too much. Claire had chosen silence over justice, and Olivia had paid the price. Now Zoe was faced with an impossible decision. She could stay silent, like the others, and protect herself. Or she could seek revenge, not only for Olivia, but for all the women who had suffered at the hands of the Harlows. The weight of the choice hung heavy in the room. Zoe took a deep breath, her mind spinning with the reality of it all. The woman she had fallen for was connected to the family that had destroyed so many lives. Could Claire be trusted? Was she still protecting her family? And most importantly, could Zoe walk away without confronting the evil that had taken Olivia from her? Claire's tear-filled eyes met Zoe's. "I didn't want this," Claire whispered. "But if you go after them, they'll come for you. You have no idea how powerful they are." Zoe knew the danger, but the need for justice was stronger than her fear. She couldn't stay silent. Olivia had died trying to expose the truth, and Zoe couldn't let that be in vain. As Claire stood there, broken and conflicted, Zoe made her decision. She wouldn't back down. Zoe turned away, her heart heavy. She left Claire standing in the doorway, knowing their relationship could never be the same. But this wasn't just about Claire anymore. This was about the truth, and Zoe wasn't going to stop until the Harlows were exposed for who they really were. After the confrontation with Claire, Zoe knew there was no turning back. The truth about the Harlow family was out in the open, and it was darker than she could have ever imagined. Olivia's death was no accident, and the power the Harlows held over the town had kept their crimes buried for years. Zoe was determined to bring that truth to light. The next morning, Zoe met with the women she had come to know: Fiona, Ivy, Maura, and Diana. They gathered in Fiona's cafe, the warm smell of coffee contrasting with the cold reality of the conversation ahead. The letters Zoe found had connected all of them, each woman a victim of the Harlow family's manipulation. Ivy's sister had disappeared under mysterious circumstances after crossing paths with Nathaniel Harlow. Maura's art career had been quietly destroyed when she refused Nathaniel's advances, and Diana, as a lawyer, had been blackmailed into protecting the family's darkest secrets. For years, these women had remained silent, out of fear of what the Harlows could do to them. But now, with Zoe's discovery of the letters and the new light shed on Olivia's death, the time for silence was over. They couldn't hide anymore. Zoe's determination sparked something in them, a desire for justice, for freedom from the family that had haunted them for so long. As the women sat around the table, Ivy spoke first, her voice trembling. "We've all been too scared for too long, but if we don't speak up now, it will never stop." Maura nodded in agreement, her hands shaking as she took a sip of coffee. "But what if they come after us? The Harlows still control so much in this town." Diana, the most reserved of the group, finally spoke up. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the fear she still held. "If we go to the authorities, we need proof. Real proof. The letters are a start, but it might not be enough to bring them down." Zoe knew Diana was right. The letters alone wouldn't be enough to topple the Harlow family. They needed more, something concrete that tied Nathaniel Harlow directly to the crimes. Zoe could feel the weight of the task ahead, but she also felt the strength of the women around her. Together, they could do this. They had to. A few days later, Zoe received a tip from a mysterious source. A small envelope had been left on her doorstep containing a USB drive. The drive held more damning evidence, emails, photos, and audio recordings that implicated Nathaniel and other members of the Harlow family in years of corruption, extortion, and abuse. The documents were detailed and undeniable. This was the proof they had been waiting for. With the evidence in hand, Zoe and the women knew it was time to act, but they also knew the risks. Exposing the Harlows could make them targets, and the consequences could be dangerous. They had all lived in fear for so long, but Zoe's resolve gave them the courage they needed. They couldn't let Olivia's death go unanswered. On October 1st, 2022, Zoe, along with Fiona, Ivy, Maura, and Diana, approached the local authorities. Armed with the letters and the new evidence from the USB drive, they laid out the full extent of the Harlow family's crimes. The investigation was swift, and the story quickly spread throughout Westford. The once hidden secrets of the Harlow family began to surface, and the town could no longer ignore the truth. As the authorities closed in on Nathaniel Harlow, the atmosphere in Westford shifted. Whispers of the Harlow family's downfall spread through the town. People who had once stayed silent out of fear were now coming forward, adding their voices to the growing list of accusations. The Harlows' grip on Westford was finally loosening. For Zoe, the journey had been painful, but it had also been necessary. She had uncovered the truth about Olivia's death, and in doing so, she had helped break the cycle of silence that had gripped the town for decades. As the investigation unfolded, Zoe stood by the shore, watching the waves crash against the cliffs. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The Harlows wouldn't go down without a fight, but for the first time, she felt a sense of peace. Olivia's memory was no longer shrouded in mystery, and the women of Westford were finally free from the shadow of the Harlow family. By late October, the investigation into the Harlow family was well underway. Nathaniel Harlow, once the untouchable patriarch of Westford, faced a series of charges that would forever tarnish the family name. The town, which had remained silent for so long, was finally speaking out. People who had feared retaliation now stepped forward, adding their stories to the case. For Zoe Mason, the fight was not just about justice for Olivia. It was about helping others find their voice. The women who had been manipulated, silenced, and hurt by the Harlows were finally being heard. The evidence Zoe and the others uncovered was enough to spark a trial, one that would shine a light on decades of abuse hidden behind the walls of power and wealth. Though the Harlows' reign in Westford was coming to an end, the scars they left behind wouldn't heal overnight. The town had been changed forever, and so had Zoe. She had uncovered the truth, but it came at a cost. Her relationship with Claire, the woman she had once trusted, was shattered by the weight of the secrets she carried. And though Nathaniel Harlow would face justice, the pain of Olivia's loss remained. Standing by the cliffs, watching the waves crash below, Zoe knew the road to healing was still ahead. But for the first time, she felt closure. The truth had come to light, and the cycle of silence had been broken. Westford could finally begin to heal, and so could Zoe, and that brings us to the end of this story. What would you have done in Zoe's situation? Would you stay silent to protect yourself or seek justice no matter the cost? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping true crime content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have more mysteries to uncover, and we want you along for the journey. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.